mini presentations, only a few minutes each. I'm going to start since I'm using Pat's computer, so thank you for that. And mine is just really brief, talking about what I was up to last week. And it has less to do with me exploring and more, once again, me exploring the explorers, which is a kind of thing. So, International Space University Space Studies Program. There is, some of you are probably familiar with it, the International Space University. It's based in Strasbourg, France. It was started by Peter Diamandis, among others. Harrison Schmitt, an astronaut. And so it has been around since the 1990s. And it is really focused on giving professionals within the space exploration industries a chance to get further education. It's not accredited, I'll say that, but it does have a number of kind of credential programs and things like that. And one of the things they're really known for is something called the Space Studies Program. This takes place during 9 weeks every summer, and they locate it in different parts of the world so that people involved, in different locations can have it move closer and further away to them. Most of the time, participants, we're not supposed to call them students. Although I will say at my age, since most of them are between like 25 and 30, I was thinking of them as students. I'm a college professor, so they gave me that vibe. But the participants come from literally around the world, every continent except Antarctica. We're very well represented. São José dos Campos, Brazil is outside of Sao Paulo. It's about an hour and a few minutes from Sao Paulo. It is sort of the big aviation and technology center of Brazil. Bless you. And the events that I participated in, I was asked to come down. They flew me down and I was asked to do a workshop, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But everything was held at the, my Portuguese was getting better while I was there. Now that I've come home, I'm not using it anymore. But the Instituto Tecnológico de Aeronáutica, which is a bad accent, but the Technological Institute of Aeronautics, and it's basically an Air Force base. It's an Air Force base. The students who attend there are automatically registered as members of the Air Force for at least a year, and they accept less than 2%, fewer than 2% of the people who apply. We had to go through, we had very special drivers who had to take us from the faculty hotel to the university. And we had to go through, screening and have our tags scanned and everything else to get on. The students on site are in camouflage, carrying big batons, and it's definitely a working university and a working military base simultaneously. So it's basically an Air Force Academy. This is the ITA's logo. This was the building that I spent a lot of time in, doing teaching and helping with other teaching. And then this is the logo for the Space Studies Program. It's their 35th annual in São José dos Campos. Next year, it's going to be in Houston, Texas. So a little bit closer. I did a workshop on ethnographic methods. So some of you may be familiar with the fact that I'm an anthropologist of religion, and I'm very interested in how religious ideas influence people involved in space exploration and how space exploration influences people's religious ideas. The chair of the humanities program for this is a woman who just joined the Explorers Club, Neve Shaw. She's in the Great Britain chapter. And she asked me to come down because we've been on a radio program together, and she was interested in sort of my more human-focused take on space exploration. So I ended up doing a 3.5-hour workshop with both the humanities students and the engineering students. Every student has to, or every participant has to choose an area. One of them was apps, one of them was human performance, one of them was engineering, one of them was, I mentioned humanities. There was, I think, 6 or 7 of them. And the engineering and humanities group came together for this presentation that I was doing. I talked to them about the way that pilgrimage and space exploration are similar, how astronauts that I've spoken to become attached to certain objects that they take with them into space or bring back from space, which is very similar to what pilgrims who visit sacred places do. And we talked about sort of what it means for an object to have meaning Then I had them split up. They did interviews with each other about objects that had meaning to them related to space. In fact, I had to let them know very far ahead of time so they could bring objects with them that they could talk about with their partners. And then I had them take field notes and then do interviewing, field notes, and then coding. They had to go through and code the information in their field notes and then present ultimately on their partner. It went really well. Feedback was really good. And these are some scenes from the classroom. This was during one of the breaks. These were, the woman in green is Neve Shaw, also, like I said, an Explorers Club member. She is the chair of humanities. The gentleman back there in kind of the yellow shirt is Todd Mosher. He's at Blue Origin, and he was the chair of engineering for the group. These were some of the participants during the event when I was waiting to get started, mid-lecture there. And then, of course, we did a giant selfie with everybody at the end that we did. I was kept around for multiple days. And one of the things I did that night was participated on a STEM outreach panel at a local school. And so myself, this is Milton, and I can't remember his name, but he's local to Brazil. He's a school teacher who does science out there. This is Stephen Brody, retired from NASA, who's done a lot with outreach, and then me, and then he was the person there. It was done in honor of Ken Rosengap, who was a Canadian member of the military who was very involved in STEM outreach, and that's Ken's widow, who I only spoke to on the screen, so I don't recall her name. Another event that Neve had the students do was a workshop that we had to do in a local park, which was a terrible inconvenience. It was actually very beautiful. And that was about telling stories, figuring out what to include when you're describing a situation. And so most of the students or participants who took humanities were not involved in humanities. They were people like engineers, pilots, folks in the military who were having a chance to kind of work on things that perhaps they didn't have a lot of background on. One of the fun things were extronautics. I was able to observe this one. This was the engineering participants, and the humanities participants were involved as well. This is kind of one of those classic things where you have an egg and you have to throw the egg off of the building and see if it'll survive. And I don't know if I can play this, I'll give it a shot. So that was a successful one. They were all evaluated on how well their egg survived. I didn't get a good shot of this, but there's a little ledge there. We did have a casualty where one of the astronauts didn't make it all the way down, and somebody had to get a broom handle, you know, rescuing it and get it going. I think that one actually survived. Okay, now. And then just some miscellaneous things to wrap up. It was really an interesting experience to be that enmeshed in space exploration. There was a cafeteria on site. They did have space coffee that you could get, along with Brazilian specialties like feijoada. And I accidentally ordered acai in the morning and found myself essentially eating an ice cream sundae at 8 o'clock in the morning, which wasn't what I intended. They gave me a look. I didn't finish the whole thing. When we were doing the workshop in the park, guinea fowls aplenty, being very distracting and making a lot of noise. They get in groups of 10 to 15 and they just take off running for no reason in particular. And then the way that the participants got from place to place is they had space bikes that you could use and go from one building to another. So it was an interesting experience. I'm very hopeful that I can participate next year. And that's my presentation. Thank you very much. Pat, should I just close this or? Yeah.